She was standing right beside me when my engagement ring caught the light. People were smiling, laughing. Someone clapped a little too loudly. Someone else said my name with excitement. And then she leaned closer, close enough that only I could hear her, and whispered almost playfully, "Wow, I didn't think you'd do it this fast." I smiled, not because it was funny, not because it didn't hurt, but because I had spent years learning how to smile when something felt off. Have you ever had a best friend who celebrated you but not really? Someone who stood next to you during your biggest moments while quietly measuring themselves against you? If you've ever felt that strange tension in a friendship you couldn't explain, hit that like button. This story is for you. And if someone you trusted once tried to step into your life instead of standing beside it, drop your story in the comments. My name is Raina, and this is the story of how my best friend slowly tried to take my place. Not loudly, not aggressively, but patiently, and how I finally saw it, and walked away with my dignity. I met Lena when I was 22. We worked in the same modest office, the kind where everyone pretends they're temporary but years pass anyway. She sat 2 desks away from me. Loud laugh, confident posture. The kind of person who filled silence without trying. She noticed me before I noticed her. "You're really quiet," she said one afternoon, smiling like it was a compliment. "I like that. Makes you mysterious." I laughed softly. I always did. We started having lunch together. Then coffee. Then long talks after work. She told me about her childhood, her disappointments, her dreams of being seen as special. I listened. That was always my role. She said once, "I feel like I can be myself around you." I said, "Me too." And I meant it. We became inseparable in the way adult friendships sometimes do, fast, intense, full of shared routines. People referred to us as a pair. Raina and Lena. Lena and Raina. I didn't notice at first which name came first more often. Lena liked attention. I didn't mind standing beside it. I believed there was room for both of us. When she changed her hair, I complimented it. When she got praise at work, I celebrated her. When she felt insecure, I reassured her. I never kept score. That's important. Because she did. It started with little things that felt harmless. She began ordering the same drink as me, then laughing and saying, "Why do I always like what you like?" She bought the same jacket I owned. Same color. Same cut. She started using phrases I used, repeating my jokes almost word for word. When I noticed, she'd shrug. "We spend too much time together. We're basically the same person now." People laughed. Something in me tightened, but I ignored it. I told myself this is what closeness looks like. Then I got a promotion. Not a huge one. Just a quiet step forward. A nod of trust. I didn't announce it loudly. I told Lena first, like I always did. Her smile froze for just a second. Then she hugged me. Hard. "That's amazing," she said. I knew it would happen eventually. Eventually. That word lingered. After that, she started mentioning how overwhelmed she'd been at work. How management didn't appreciate her enough. How she was probably too nice. When people congratulated me, she stood nearby and added details. "Oh yeah, she's been stressed lately. She works herself too hard. She worries a lot." Always framed as concern. Always unnecessary. People started asking me if I was okay. That was new. I brushed it off. Then I met Ethan. I didn't rush to tell anyone. I never did. But Lena noticed something was different. "You've been smiling more," she said one day. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then told her. She reacted enthusiastically. Too enthusiastically. "Oh my God, finally. What's he like? Is he serious about you?" The questions came fast. I answered them without thinking. Because she was my best friend. She wanted to meet him immediately. At dinner, she laughed at everything he said. Touched his arm lightly. Asked questions that felt oddly specific. "What kind of girls do you usually go for? What scares you the most in relationships? What do you think makes someone difficult?" I felt something shift. Not jealousy. Not fear. Recognition. After that night, her messages changed. She'd ask how we were doing, then follow it with, "Just checking you're not rushing, right? You know relationships can change people. I just don't want to see you get hurt." When Ethan proposed, I told her before anyone else. Her silence lasted longer than usual. Then, "Wow, that's big." That was all. The whisper at the engagement party shouldn't have surprised me. But it did. Because until that moment, I didn't want to believe what my instincts had been quietly telling me for months. She wasn't happy for me. She was measuring. And I didn't yet understand what she planned to do with that measurement. When you're quiet by nature, people assume you don't notice things. They're wrong. We notice everything. After the engagement party, something between us shifted completely. Not on the surface. Not in any way someone else would notice. But in the space between words. In pauses that lingered too long. In questions that sounded caring but landed heavy. Lena started checking in more often. First I thought it was excitement. Then I realized it was surveillance. "How's Ethan today? Did you two talk about the future again? Are you sure you're not feeling overwhelmed?" If I said I was happy, she'd respond with caution. If I admitted stress, she'd lean into it. "I knew it," she'd say softly. I could tell something was off. That was the pattern. She never created problems. She magnified them. Slowly, patiently, she started showing up more around Ethan too. Casual at first. Group settings. Quick conversations. Always friendly. Always helpful. She remembered details I'd shared with her privately and repeated them to him like observations. "You know, Raina tends to shut down when she's anxious. She doesn't always say what she's feeling. She's strong, but she carries a lot inside." All true. All weaponized. Ethan didn't see it as manipulation. Why would he? Sounded like concern. Like insight. And that was the genius of it. She never criticized me directly. She framed me. As fragile. As complicated. As someone who needed managing. At the same time, she subtly elevated herself. "She and I are so alike," she'd say casually. "We think the same way. I just get her." But she didn't get me. She was studying me. I started noticing small fractures in how people treated me. Friends began checking in more carefully. Coworkers softened their tone. Ethan started asking questions that felt unfamiliar. "Are you okay? You seem stressed lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" Those questions weren't accusations. They were worse. They made me doubt myself. I asked Lena once carefully if I'd done something wrong. She looked genuinely hurt. "Why would you think that?" she asked. "I'm always defending you." That sentence again. Defending me from what? From who? I didn't push. I started paying attention. I noticed how she told the same story differently depending on who was listening. How details shifted just enough to change the meaning. I noticed how she always spoke first. Always filled silence. Always summarized situations before anyone else could. She controlled the narrative by controlling the timing. And then came the first real betrayal. Ethan and I had our first serious disagreement. Nothing dramatic. Just a normal conflict about moving cities for work. We took space for a day. I didn't tell anyone. The next morning Lena called. "I heard things are tense," she said gently. My stomach dropped. I asked how she knew. She laughed lightly. "I just felt it." That was a lie. Later, Ethan admitted she'd reached out to him to check in. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of the argument, but because something finally clicked. She wasn't reacting to my life. She was inserting herself into it. From that moment on I stopped sharing. Not abruptly. Not obviously. I became quieter with her. More neutral. Less detailed. And that's when she escalated. When people who crave control feel it slipping, they don't let go. They tighten. She began telling stories about me when I wasn't there. Not cruel ones. Concerned ones. She's been distant. I think the engagement is a lot for her. She doesn't always handle change well. People started repeating those words back to me without realizing where they came from. "You've been distant. Are you okay with the wedding? This is a big step, are you sure?" It felt like living inside a version of myself someone else had written. I tried to explain to Ethan once that something felt wrong. He listened. He really did. But he said, "I think she just worries about you." That's when I stopped explaining. Because the moment you start justifying your reality, you've already lost ground. I didn't confront her again. I did something else. I observed. I saved messages. I noted timing. I watched how she spoke to others versus how she spoke to me. And slowly, painfully, I accepted the truth I'd been avoiding. She wasn't my friend anymore. She was competing with my position in people's lives. And she was very good at it. Once I accepted what Lena was doing, I stopped reacting emotionally. That was the turning point. When you're hurt, manipulators thrive. When you're confused, they tighten their grip. But when you go still, truly still, they start making mistakes. I began noticing how often Lena positioned herself as the messenger. If someone was upset with me, she knew before I did. If there was tension in a group, she explained it before anyone asked. She was always helping, always clarifying, and always shaping the outcome. The sabotage escalated quietly. Wedding planning became the perfect stage. She offered to help with everything: venue ideas, guest list suggestions, vendor recommendations. She framed it as support, but slowly decisions started drifting away from me. She already talked to the florist. She said you preferred something simpler. She mentioned you might be overwhelmed. I wasn't overwhelmed. I was being edited out. When I disagreed, she sighed gently and said, "I'm just trying to reduce stress for you." Everyone nodded. That's when I realized how dangerous her approach was. She never made herself look powerful. She made herself look necessary. Then came the lie. It was small, but deliberate. She told Ethan I'd confided doubts about the marriage. That I'd said I wasn't sure I was ready. She framed it as worry. "I probably shouldn't say this," she told him, "but I care about you both." When Ethan asked me about it, I felt something inside me harden. Not anger. Resolve. I told him the truth calmly. Directly. "I never said that." He believed me, but doubt had been planted. That's how these things work. I didn't confront Lena. Instead, I started my investigation. I went back through messages. Months' worth. Not to reread them emotionally, but to analyze them. I noticed how often she paraphrased instead of quoted. How she summarized conversations rather than showing them. How she avoided specifics when recounting my words. I started asking people gentle questions. What exactly did she say? When did she mention that? Did she quote me, or was that her interpretation? The answers were revealing. No two versions were the same. That was my confirmation. The final straw came 3 weeks before the wedding. A mutual friend pulled me aside, hesitant. "I don't know if I should say this," she began, "but Lena told a few of us you might postpone the wedding. She said you're struggling emotionally." That lie was too big, too public, too strategic. And for the first time, it wasn't just hurting me. It was undermining my future. That night I didn't cry. I organized. I made timelines, screenshots, side-by-side comparisons of what Lena told different people. I noticed contradictions so obvious they were almost embarrassing. She had underestimated one thing: my patience. I didn't expose her immediately. I waited. Because the truth doesn't just need evidence. It needs the right moment. And that moment was coming. The moment came quietly. No dramatic confrontation. No raised voices. No accusations thrown across a room. That's what she expected. The truth came out the way it always does when someone has been lying patiently for too long. Piece by piece, in front of the wrong people at exactly the wrong time. It happened during a small gathering. Not a party. Not a formal meeting. Just a few close friends and family helping with final wedding details. Lena was there, of course. Calm. Helpful. In control. She was telling a story again. "I think Raina just needs reassurance," she said softly. "She gets overwhelmed easily." I didn't interrupt. Instead, I asked one question. "What exactly did I say?" The room went quiet. She smiled, lightly caught off guard. "You know. Just that you weren't sure everything was happening too fast." I nodded. "When did I say that?" She hesitated. "That night we talked. After work." I pulled out my phone. "I wasn't with you that night," I said calmly. "I was out of town." Silence. She laughed awkwardly. "Maybe it was another day." I scrolled. "Here are our messages from that week," I continued. "There's nothing like that here." No one spoke. I didn't look at her. I looked at the room. "I want to be very clear," I said, still calm. "I have never said I was unsure about my relationship or my wedding. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't emotional. I was factual. Lena's smile tightened. She tried to recover. I might have misunderstood, she said. I was just worried. That's when Ethan spoke. You told me she said it directly, he said quietly. That sentence changed everything. Because now it wasn't my word against hers. It was consistency versus improvisation. I didn't pile on. I let the silence do the work. Someone else asked, wait, you told me something different. Another voice followed. Me too. Lena's stories began colliding with each other. Not because I pushed, but because lies don't hold up under shared memory. She tried to redirect. I think we're all just stressed. But it was too late. The mask had slipped, not dramatically but unmistakably. From that moment on, people started paying attention. Not to what she said, but how often it changed. Not to her concern, but how it always placed her in the center. After that day, the shift was immediate. People stopped asking her to speak for me. Stopped checking in with her about my feelings. Stopped treating her like the interpreter of my life. She noticed. Her messages to me became shorter, sharper, less warm. You embarrassed me, she wrote once. I didn't reply. Because embarrassment is what happens when control disappears. She tried one last tactic. Victimhood. She told people I'd turned cold. That I'd pushed her away. That she felt hurt and confused. But now people ask questions. About what? When did that happen? What exactly did she say? And for the first time, Lena didn't have answers ready. That was the end of her power. Not with a bang. With a pause. After that gathering, nothing dramatic happened. No fallout posts. No angry messages. No public arguments. And that's what made it devastating for her. Because people like Lena survive on reaction. They need conflict to rewrite themselves as the victim. They need noise to hide the cracks. I gave her none. What happened instead was something slower and far more permanent. People began creating distance on their own. They stopped looping her into plans. Stopped asking her opinions first. Stopped confiding in her. She felt it before anyone said it out loud. I could see it in the way she hovered during conversations, trying to insert herself. In the way she laughed a little too loudly, talked a little too fast. In the way she watched me now, not with confidence but with calculation. For the first time, she didn't know what I knew. That uncertainty ate at her. She tried to regain ground by being extra helpful. Overly present. She volunteered for things no one asked her to do. But the spell was broken. Once people see manipulation, they can't unsee it. Ethan changed too. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just clearly. He stopped sharing personal details with her. Stopped seeking her advice. Stopped defending her reflexively. One night, weeks later, he said something that stayed with me. I didn't realize how often she spoke for you, he said. And how rarely she actually listened. That acknowledgement mattered more than any apology. The wedding went on as planned. Lena attended, but she wasn't in the center anymore. She wasn't the organizer. She wasn't the translator. She wasn't the emotional authority. She was just another guest. I didn't avoid her. I didn't confront her. I treated her like someone I no longer trusted. Polite. Distant. Neutral. That's when she understood she had truly lost. Because anger can be manipulated. Distance cannot. After the wedding, life expanded. Without the constant background tension, I felt lighter. Clearer. More myself. I noticed how much space her presence had taken up in my thoughts before. How much energy I'd spent managing, anticipating, softening. That energy returned to me. I poured it into my work. Into my marriage. Into friendships that felt mutual instead of competitive. Lena faded. Not completely, but enough. She tried reaching out once months later. I miss how close we used to be, she wrote. I read the message carefully. I felt no anger. No sadness. No guilt. Just clarity. I didn't reply. Because closeness built on competition isn't closeness at all. And I wasn't willing to go back to a version of myself that made room for someone else to stand in my place. Time has a way of revealing what conflict hides. Months passed. Then a year. Lena became someone I used to know. Not because I erased her, but because she no longer fit into the life I was building. That realization came quietly one afternoon when I was unpacking boxes in our new apartment. Sunlight filled the room. The kind of calm that doesn't ask for attention, it just exists. I realized I hadn't thought about her in weeks. Not with anger. Not with sadness. Not even with curiosity. Just absence. And that absence felt like freedom. I used to believe that losing a best friend meant losing part of yourself. That distance meant failure. That walking away meant something had gone wrong. But what I learned is this. Sometimes distance is not loss. Sometimes it's alignment. I had outgrown the version of myself that confused loyalty with self-sacrifice. I had outgrown friendships that needed me to stay smaller so someone else could feel bigger. And I had outgrown the idea that silence meant weakness. The last time I heard about Lena was through someone else. They mentioned she'd had a falling out with another friend. Similar story. Similar misunderstandings. Similar concern. I didn't feel validated. I felt grateful. Grateful that I had trusted my instincts when I did. Grateful that I didn't wait longer. Grateful that I chose peace before bitterness had time to take root. Ethan and I built a life that felt steady. Honest. Grounded. No third voices. No translators. No quiet interference. Just us. I learned to speak when it mattered. And to stay silent when silence was stronger. I learned that people who compete with you aren't inspired by you. They're threatened. And people who try to replace you don't want your life. They want your position in other people's minds. But here's the truth they never expect you to realize. Your place is not transferable. It's earned. It's lived. It's yours. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, if a friend's concern feels heavy, if support feels like surveillance, if closeness feels like comparison, pause. Pay attention. You don't need proof to trust a pattern. You don't need permission to step back. And you don't need to explain your peace to anyone who benefited from your silence. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't exposure. It's elevation. It's choosing a life where you don't have to look over your shoulder. Where you don't have to manage someone else's insecurities. Where your joy isn't measured against someone else's ego. If this story resonated with you, share your experience in the comments. Someone reading them might realize they're not imagining things. And if you want more stories about quiet power, emotional clarity, and reclaiming yourself without burning everything down, stay with Revenge with Raina. Because not every ending needs closure. Some endings just need courage. And sometimes, walking away with your dignity intact is the loudest victory of all. If you've ever had a friend who clapped for you while quietly competing with your life, if you've ever felt that something was off even when everything looked fine on the surface, this story was for you. Not every betrayal comes with shouting or obvious cruelty. Some come with smiles, concern, and a slow rewriting of who you are in other people's minds. And if you're still in that situation right now, let me tell you something clearly. You're not imagining it. Patterns don't lie. Your discomfort is information. You don't need to expose anyone loudly to protect yourself. You don't need to explain your boundaries to people who benefited from crossing them. Sometimes the strongest move is stepping back, staying calm, and letting time reveal what you already feel. If this story resonated with you, share your experience in the comments. Your story might be the one someone else needs to hear today. Like this video if you believe in quiet power. Subscribe to Revenge with Raina for more stories about emotional justice, silent strength, and starting over on your own terms. And remember, not all revenge is loud. Not all justice needs witnesses. And not all victories come with applause. Some victories come with peace. And that peace is everything.